In the world of global trade, things can get complicated. But in 2025, President Trump decided to make things a bit more explosive. He slapped huge taxes, called tariffs, on goods coming from China. Trump said these tariffs would protect American jobs and businesses. He believed China wasn't playing fair in the global market. But not everyone agreed. In fact, many experts warned that these tariffs could backfire, and backfire they did. One of the biggest casualties of this trade war was Boeing, America's champion airplane maker. For decades, Boeing had dominated the skies, selling its iconic jets all over the world. China, with its rapidly growing economy and appetite for air travel, was a particularly important customer. But the tariffs threw a massive wrench into Boeing's plans. China retaliated with tariffs of its own, specifically targeting American-made products, including Boeing's airplanes. This made Boeing planes much more expensive in China, and Chinese airlines started canceling orders. To make matters worse, Boeing was already struggling with its own set of problems. The company was reeling from the fallout of two fatal crashes involving its 737 MAX aircraft, which had tarnished its reputation and led to costly production delays. The tariffs felt like adding insult to injury. As Boeing floundered, its rivals sensed an opportunity. Airbus, Boeing's European arch-rival, wasted no time in capitalizing on Boeing's woes. With Boeing effectively shut out of the Chinese market, Airbus swooped in, offering its own planes at competitive prices. Chinese airlines, eager to expand their fleets, welcomed Airbus with open arms. But it wasn't just Airbus that Boeing had to worry about. Comac, a Chinese state-owned aerospace manufacturer, was also emerging as a serious contender in the global aviation market. Backed by the Chinese government, Comac was developing its own line of commercial aircraft, aiming to compete directly with both Boeing and Airbus. The trade war between the US and China sent shockwaves through the global economy. Stock markets around the world tumbled as investors panicked. Businesses large and small braced for the worst. The tariffs disrupted global supply chains, leading to higher prices for consumers and businesses alike. The International Monetary Fund warned that the trade war could shave off billions of dollars from the global economy. Countries around the world scrambled to adjust to the new reality, with some forging new trade partnerships to reduce their dependence on the US and China. With Boeing on the back foot, Comac saw a golden opportunity to establish itself as a major player in the global aviation market. The Chinese government, eager to reduce its reliance on foreign companies, poured resources into Comac, providing it with the financial backing and political support it needed to thrive. Comac's flagship aircraft, the C919, a narrow-body jet designed to compete with Boeing's 737 and Airbus's A320, began conducting test flights. While still in its early stages, the C919 represented China's ambition to become a leader in the aerospace industry. With a captive domestic market and growing international ambitions, Comac was poised to challenge the dominance of Boeing and Airbus. While the tariffs undoubtedly dealt a blow to Boeing, some argued that the company's troubles ran deeper. Critics pointed to a series of questionable management decisions that had eroded Boeing's competitive edge. The 1997 merger with McDonnell Douglas, once hailed as a strategic masterstroke, was now seen as a move that had prioritized short-term profits over long-term innovation. The subsequent relocation of Boeing's headquarters from Seattle to Chicago, a move seen by some as prioritizing finance over engineering, further fueled discontent. Furthermore, Boeing's decision to outsource key components of its aircraft to cut costs had backfired, leading to quality control issues and production delays. The 737 MAX crashes, attributed in part to faulty software developed by a subcontractor, served as a stark reminder of the potential risks of prioritizing cost-cutting over quality and safety. The trade war between the US and China had far-reaching consequences for the global trade order. Traditional alliances were strained as countries found themselves caught in the crossfire. The European Union, a close ally of the US, found itself increasingly at odds with the Trump administration's protectionist policies. China, meanwhile, sought to strengthen its ties with other countries, particularly those involved in its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project aimed at connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. The trade war, in a way, accelerated a shift in global power dynamics, with the US's influence waning as China's star continued to rise. Navigating the turbulent skies ahead, facing mounting losses, a shrinking market share, and an uncertain future, Boeing found itself at a crossroads. The company had announced plans to cut production of its 787 Dreamliner, a wide-body jet that had been a bright spot in its portfolio. Layoffs loomed as orders dried up. The question on everyone's mind was whether Boeing could regain its footing. Some analysts remained cautiously optimistic, pointing to the company's deep roots in the aviation industry, its technological prowess, and its enduring brand recognition. Others, however, expressed doubts, arguing that the damage inflicted by the trade war and Boeing's own missteps would be difficult to overcome. The Boeing saga served as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of protectionist trade policies. The tariffs, intended to protect American jobs and businesses, had ironically hurt one of America's most iconic companies, and handed a golden opportunity to its rivals. The trade war highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy, and the need for cooperation and collaboration rather than confrontation. It also underscored the importance of investing in innovation, education, and infrastructure to maintain America's competitive edge in a rapidly changing world. The path forward for Boeing, and for America's place in the global economy, remained uncertain, but it was clear that a new approach was needed, one that embraced collaboration, innovation, and a realistic understanding of the global landscape. Friends, gather round, and let's talk tariffs. Sounds boring, right? Like something your grandpa complains about over a bowl of prunes. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because these ain't your grandpappy's tariffs. In 2025, former President Trump decided to slap big old taxes, we're talking 25% or more, on goods coming from China. His reasoning? Make America great again, of course. The idea was to boost American manufacturing and bring back jobs. Now, tariffs aren't inherently evil. They can be useful tools in trade negotiations. But like a chainsaw in the hands of a toddler, they require a delicate touch and a well-thought-out plan. Unfortunately, subtlety and nuance weren't exactly hallmarks of the Trump administration. Instead of a scalpel, we got a sledgehammer. The tariffs were broad, hitting everything from electronics to clothing. And let's just say our trading partners weren't exactly thrilled about this sudden tax hike on their products. The problem is, folks, we live in a globalized world. What happens in Beijing doesn't stay in Beijing. It ripples out like a bad burrito, affecting everyone. And boy, did we get a bellyache from this one. Remember that whole globalized world thing? Well, China, being the economic powerhouse it is, wasn't just going to sit there and take it. They hit back with their own tariffs on American goods. Soybeans? Taxed. Cars? Taxed. Even playing cards weren't safe from the tariff typhoon. Congratulations, everyone, we were officially in a trade war. Now you might think, a war? That sounds serious. And you'd be right, trade wars are bad for business. They disrupt supply chains, drive up prices, and create uncertainty in the global market. It's like playing a game of Jenga with the global economy, except instead of pulling out blocks, we're chucking Molotov cocktails at the tower. And guess who gets caught in the crossfire? That's right, folks. Us regular schmucks just trying to buy a new phone without needing a small loan. Remember that 401k you've been diligently contributing to, hoping to retire someday and finally tell your boss where they can shove it? Well, the trade war had other plans. The stock market, that fickle beast, hates uncertainty. And uncertainty is all we got. The S&P 500, a key indicator of the stock market's health, went on a roller coaster ride that would make even the bravest carnival goer lose their lunch. It plunged over 20% from its peak. Retirement accounts across the country felt the burn. People panicked, investors pulled out. It was a mess. And it wasn't just Wall Street fat cats feeling the pinch. Average Americans saw their retirement savings dwindle, their dreams of a comfortable golden age fading faster than a cheap dye job in a rainstorm. Remember that new phone we talked about? Yeah, about that. Those tariffs, they didn't just magically disappear. Those costs passed right on down to you, the consumer. Prices on everyday goods skyrocketed, phones got pricier, clothes got more expensive. Even that avocado toast you hipsters love so much became a luxury item. Remember when a new TV was a celebratory purchase? Something you'd save up for, maybe even invite the neighbors over to watch? Well, thanks to the trade war, it became a risky investment, a gamble on whether you could afford to keep the lights on after splurging on a bigger screen. Now I know what you're thinking, but John, you say, didn't Trump promise this would bring back jobs? And you'd be right, he did. But reality, as it often does, had other ideas. See, those tariffs didn't just hurt Chinese companies, they hurt American businesses too. Farmers who relied on exporting soybeans to China, devastated. Small businesses that relied on affordable imports, forced to raise prices or shut down. And those manufacturing jobs Trump promised to bring back? Well, they didn't exactly materialize like a magical MAGA miracle. In fact, some companies, faced with rising costs, did the unthinkable. They moved their manufacturing, wait for it, overseas. The irony, it burns. Now, you'd think that starting a trade war with one of the world's biggest economies would ruffle a few feathers, and you'd be right. Our allies, those plucky pals we usually rely on for, global stability and whatnot, were not amused. Canada, our friendly neighbors to the north, known for their maple syrup and passive-aggressive politeness, hit back with their own tariffs. Japan, land of the rising sun and meticulously crafted automobiles, expressed deep concern. Even the Europeans, with their fancy cheeses and complicated relationship with pants, considered retaliatory measures. It was like a global game of telephone, except instead of whispering secrets, everyone was slapping tariffs on each other and muttering obscenities in their native languages. Now, remember Boeing, that American aviation giant soaring high above the competition? Well, they got clipped by the trade war eagle. China, being the largest buyer of Boeing airplanes, decided to take their business elsewhere. Orders were canceled, deliveries were suspended, Boeing's stock plummeted faster than a malfunctioning 737 MAX. Too soon? The message was clear. You want to play hardball with tariffs? We'll play hardball with your most iconic companies. Back home, the American public wasn't exactly throwing ticker tape parades. The trade war, like a bad case of the flu, spread misery far and wide. Farmers struggled to stay afloat. Workers lost their jobs. Consumers felt the pinch at the cash register. Anger grew. Protests erupted. People boycotted American-made products, opting for cheaper alternatives, even if it meant sacrificing quality or ethical sourcing. The American dream, already on life support for many, seemed to be flatlining. Remember those companies that moved their manufacturing overseas? Well, they weren't the only ones. Faced with rising costs and a volatile market, more and more American companies started looking for escape routes from the trade war inferno. They shifted production to other countries, seeking friendlier shores with fewer tariffs and less drama. The Made in America label, once a badge of honor, started to feel like a relic of a bygone era. The unintended consequence of the trade war, a hollowing out of American manufacturing, the very thing it was supposed to revitalize. So, there you have it, folks. The Trump tariffs, a cautionary tale of unintended consequences, economic turmoil, and global instability. Did they make America great again? The evidence, much like a Trump administration official under oath, is pretty thin on the ground. What we're left with is a legacy of uncertainty, a global economy still reeling from the shock, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. The trade war is a stark reminder that in our interconnected world, there are no winners, only survivors, and sometimes even surviving comes at a steep price. The global economy is a complex web of interconnectedness. Nations depend on each other for goods, services, and resources. This delicate balance can be easily disrupted. The Trump administration's trade policies, particularly the tariffs imposed on Chinese goods, have ignited a trade war with far-reaching consequences. These tariffs, intended to protect American jobs and industries, have instead triggered a chain reaction of retaliation and uncertainty. The impact of these policies extends far beyond China and the United States. Other nations, drawn into the conflict, face difficult choices. They must navigate the complexities of a global economy increasingly defined by protectionism. The consequences of these actions are only beginning to be felt. Few companies embody the complexities of global trade like Boeing. The American aerospace giant relies on a vast network of suppliers and customers worldwide. This intricate system has been thrown into disarray by the trade war. China, a key market for Boeing, retaliated against U.S. tariffs by canceling orders. This move sent shockwaves through the company and the broader aviation industry. The consequences for Boeing have been severe. The loss of Chinese orders has resulted in billions of dollars in lost revenue. Production cuts have become necessary, impacting thousands of jobs. The situation highlights the fragility of global supply chains. It also underscores the potential for economic conflict to spill over into other sectors. Economists warn of a potential global recession. The trade war, with its accompanying uncertainty and disruption, is a major contributing factor. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its global growth forecasts, citing trade tensions as a primary concern. The possibility of a recession, once a distant threat, has become increasingly likely. The severity of such a recession remains uncertain. However, Experts suggest it could be the worst economic downturn since the 2008 financial crisis. The interconnected nature of the global economy means that a recession in one part of the world will inevitably have ripple effects elsewhere. No nation is immune to the potential fallout. The global supply chain, once a model of efficiency and interconnectedness, is now under immense strain. Tariffs have disrupted the flow of goods and services, leading to delays, shortages, and increased costs. Businesses, forced to navigate this new landscape, face difficult decisions. Some companies are shifting production to other countries in an attempt to avoid tariffs. Others are absorbing the increased costs, leading to lower profits and job losses. The disruption to the global supply chain is having a ripple effect throughout the global economy, contributing to inflation and slowing economic growth. Section 5. General Motors, steering towards globalization. The trade war presents a stark dilemma for American companies. General Motors, once a symbol of American manufacturing might, has been forced to adapt to the new realities of global trade. Despite President Trump's America First rhetoric, GM has undertaken a strategic shift towards globalization. The company has invested heavily in electric vehicle research and development. It has also expanded its manufacturing footprint in China and Mexico. These moves, while necessary to remain competitive, have drawn criticism from those who see them as a betrayal of American workers. GM's situation highlights the challenges faced by American companies trying to navigate the complexities of the global economy. Section 6. America First versus the World. The Trump administration's America First policy, centered on protectionism and economic nationalism, has put the United States at odds with its trading partners. The imposition of tariffs, intended to bring back manufacturing jobs and reduce the trade deficit, has had mixed results. While some sectors have seen a temporary boost, others have suffered. The trade war has also damaged relationships with key allies, creating uncertainty and instability in the global economy. The America First approach, while appealing to some, ignores the realities of a globalized world. It also fails to address the underlying structural issues that have led to job losses and economic inequality in the United States. Section 7. Exodus of the automakers. The American auto industry, once a powerhouse of the global economy, is facing an exodus of manufacturers. Companies like Hyundai, Toyota, and Nissan are shifting production out of the United States to avoid tariffs. This trend has resulted in job losses and factory closures, dealing a blow to the American economy. The Trump administration's tariffs intended to protect American jobs have had the opposite effect in the auto industry. The situation highlights the complexities of global supply chains and the unintended consequences of protectionist policies. Section 8. The Rise of the Electric Dragon. As the United States grapples with the consequences of its trade policies, China is positioning itself as a leader in the global economy. The country is investing heavily in emerging technologies, particularly electric vehicles and renewable energy. Chinese companies like BYD and NIO are emerging as major players in the EV market. China's rise as an economic powerhouse is a direct challenge to the United States' dominance. The country's focus on innovation and its willingness to invest in the future stand in stark contrast to the United States' inward-looking policies. Section 9. The Uncertain Future of the American Economy. The future of the American economy remains uncertain. The trade war, coupled with other factors such as rising inequality and political polarization, has created a sense of unease. The potential for a recession looms large, and the America First approach has done little to address the underlying structural problems facing the country. The United States stands at a crossroads. It can continue down the path of protectionism and isolationism, or choose to engage with the world in a meaningful way. The decisions made in the coming years will have far-reaching consequences for the American economy and the world.